So good morning, children. Good morning to you. And I'm happy to be here this morning. And why I asked you all to go back to your classes was because I'm going to talk a little long. So I didn't want you looking up at the sky and running away. Children, you remain here. I need you. I need you here. Just stand over here in front of me. I need an audience to speak to, isn't it? All right. Okay. So, we have been looking at the book of Mark, and we have seen in that how from chapter 1 where it speaks about Jesus praying and we learn about prayer. Going on to chapter 2, we saw about the call of a man who was despised by others. Then we went on to see some of the miracles which Jesus did. And then we went on to see the kind of people who listen and the four type of heart to accept. Today I am going to talk to you from again from Mark, and these will be from chapter number 6 and 8. So before I begin that, I want you all to sit down. I want you all to be comfortable. So please sit. Teachers, I want you to take control and see that every child is listening. I don't want you doing your work or your homework. I don't want you taking out your book and learning for a test. So just listen. Though I can't see you, your teachers are my representatives and they will be watching you. And so let's go on. We are going to look at Mark chapter 6 and chapter 8. In Mark chapter 6 is a miracle in which the Lord Jesus feeds 5,000 people. And this is the only miracle which is reported in all the four Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke and John. So obviously this is something important and we have a lot of things we can learn from it. Let me just read it out to you. It says here that this is soon after a tragedy happened. The cousin of Lord Jesus, whose name was John the Baptist, and who was preaching to the people not to be wicked. And naturally the king of the country also, he told him that he had done some wicked things which he should not do. And because they got angry with him, he was imprisoned, and at an excuse, he was executed. And soon after that it says that Jesus went away to a lonely place. Sometimes we want to be alone. When something happens, something bad happens, we just want to be alone. And Jesus went away to a lonely place. It says here, he took his disciples, from verse 32 onward. They went away by themselves in a boat to a solitary place. But many who saw them leaving recognized them and ran on foot from all the towns and got there ahead of them. And when Jesus landed on the other side of the lake, remember I told you about this lake of Galilee, so huge that it's even called a sea. When Jesus landed and saw a large crowd, he had compassion on them. And then he said, it was late in the day, so his disciples came to him. He was teaching them the whole day, and now it's getting late. And what do the disciples say? Lord, it's getting late. This is a remote place, already very late. Send the people away. Let them go to the surrounding villages, buy themselves something to eat. But he answered, you give them to eat. And then they said, my goodness, that would take 8 months' wages of a man. That means 8 months' salary, which means 2/3 of a year's salary would be needed to feed these many people. How can we get so many loaves of bread? So Jesus said, what do you have? How many do you have? And they found out, and they said 5 bread loaves and 2 fish. And then Jesus directed them to have all the people sit down in groups. They sat down in groups of 150, taking the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, looking up to heaven. He gave thanks, broke the loaves, gave them to his disciples to set before the people. He also divided the 2 fish among them all. They all ate and were satisfied. Not only were they satisfied, it says, the disciples picked up 12 basketful of broken pieces, leftovers of bread and fish. And the number of men who were eaten was 5,000. Don't know how many women and children. If each man 1 woman, and then each couple 2 kids, so plenty of people were fed. And then, once this was over, soon afterwards, we come to chapter 8. And this is what happens in chapter 8. Let me read it out. During those days, another, this is a different large crowd gathered. Since they had nothing to eat, Jesus called his disciples to him and said, I have compassion for these people. Yeah, deja vu. Sounds familiar. They have been with me 3 days and have nothing to eat. If I send them home hungry, they will collapse on the way because some of them have come a long distance. See the heart of Jesus. Yeah? He has so much of compassion. And his disciples said, now look at the disciples. Okay. How quickly they forget. How quickly they have forgotten something that happened maybe just a few weeks or a few months ago. And his disciples said, where in this remote place can anyone get enough bread to feed them? Now again Jesus has to ask, how many loaves do you have? Jesus asked. They replied, 7. This time slightly more. He told the crowd to sit down again, same thing. Then he took the 7 loaves and gave thanks, broke them, gave them to his disciples to set before the people. They did so. They had a few small fish as well. Don't know how many. Remember, this was lakeside. Fishes were easily available. Poorest had fish to eat. And then the people ate, were satisfied. Afterward, the disciples picked up the leftovers. And do you know this time how many leftovers? 7 basketful of broken pieces were left. And there it says about 4,000 people were present. Men were present, again men. And having sent them away, he got into the boat with his disciples and went. Twice, Jesus took what they had, multiplied it and gave it. All the worry over. Now look what happens. 3rd time. It says here, the Pharisees came and talked. Now this is soon after. Pharisees are telling him, questioning him. And finally, Jesus says, okay, you go home now. And he left them, got back into the boat and crossed to the other side. By now it is dark. And they are crossing to the other sides. And the disciples are talking in the boat. And you know what they are talking? Let me tell you what they are talking. Very interesting. Some of you may laugh even. The disciples had forgotten to bring bread. So many leftovers, and they had forgotten to bring bread. Except for 1 loaf they had with them in the boat. And then Jesus says to them, be careful. Watch out for the yeast of the Pharisees and of the Herod. That means watch out for the evil of the Pharisees and of Herod. And they started talking to each other and saying, you know, it is because we have no bread. That's why he's saying that. Aware of their discussion, Jesus asked them, why are you talking about having no bread? Do you not see or understand? Are your hearts hardened? Do you have eyes but fail to see? and ears but fail to hear. Don't you remember? What do you think he was reminding them? You tell me. Yeah? Yeah?
The other two incidents?
He was reminding them of the other two incidents. Yes. He said to them, look what he said. When I broke 5 loaves for 5,000, how many basketful of pieces did you pick up? They replied, 12. Very good. You've been listening. And then he said, and when I broke 7 loaves for 4,000, how many basketful of pieces did you pick up?
7.
7. Okay. Then he said, do you still not understand? Do you understand? What do you understand? Anyone?
This time also God could help with one.
Yes, he could have helped them. They had 1 loaf with them. And you know what do they say here about that 1 loaf? They said it's because we don't have any bread. 1 loaf equal to 0 in their eyes. 1 loaf for them was 0. In fact, if we read about this same incident in the book of Matthew, it's very interesting. It says, they forgot. Chapter 16 of Matthew says, when they went across the lake, verse 5, they forgot to take bread. In fact, that 1 loaf which they had, they considered it nothing. Now you tell me, those of you who are sitting, you can tell your teachers in the class, how many people do you think could have been fed with that 1 loaf? Tell me. As many as God wanted, she says. Okay, anyone else has got another answer? Huh? Okay, anyone else has a different answer? Tell me numbers. All there were numbers. Tell me numbers. Yeah, Anjali, how many?
Thousands of.
1,000, okay. 1,000 could have been fed. All right. 12 could have been fed. Those 12 disciples definitely.
Yes,
Anjali ma'am says 1,000. Jesus said twice, don't you understand? Now in the class, teachers, ask them, how many do they think? Yeah? How many of you think that 1,000 could have been fed? How many of you think not 1,000, maybe 500? Some of you think maybe 20. All right. Now Jesus says, don't you understand? Now I'm going to do a little mathematics, and I want you to look very, very carefully as I write. Let's do this maths, okay? Let's start. 7 bread. So I'm writing here 7 bread. How many were fed? How many were fed?
4,000.
Okay, so I'm writing the next 4,000 fed. Anjali, are you getting this, ma'am?
Yes.
How many baskets left over?
7.
Okay, got it. 7 baskets left over. I will just put LO, left over. Okay. Now let's get to the second incident. How many bread? 5. Okay. 5 bread. Now even Rajiv sir has left his desk and come and standing here and looking. Yeah. Okay. 5 bread. How many are fed?
5,000.
5,000. And how many left over? 12 LO. Have you got it all? Anjali ma'am.
Yes.
Now let's go a little lower. Supposing there were 3 bread. How many do you think? Look.
6,000.
Huh?
6,000.
6,000 he says. All right. 6,000 could be fed. And how many baskets left over do you think you'll have? Max, come on.
17.
All right.
Yeah.
17 baskets would have been yellow. Now let's go down. They had one bread. With one bread, how many do you think could have been bread? That's God's mathematics. 7,000 you feel now. And how much many leftover baskets could there be?
22.
You are reading 70, 7,000.
70,000.
All right, one extra zero. Thank you. And 22 you say leftover baskets. The Lord Jesus asked them, do you still not understand? And you are saying we have only one bread, and for the one bread they go and say, we have no bread. You know, look at it carefully. Sometimes we think we are all alone. Sometimes we think we are only one. And we think that because we are only one, we are zero. And we think that we can do nothing. Are you afraid because you are only one? Sometimes even in the midst of a huge crowd, we feel lonely as though we are the only one. Here is your word from Jesus for you. Understand. Don't be afraid if you are only one. Don't be afraid if you have only one and the others have thousands. The love of Jesus, He will never leave. He will have compassion. He will multiply. Helen Keller said, I'm only one, but still I am one. I cannot do everything, but still I can do something. And because I cannot do everything, I will not refuse to do the something that I can do. I'll read out 2 verses for you, and then I'll finish. And this is in Joshua, book of Joshua, chapter 23 and verse 10. And Joshua says, one of you will put 1,000 to flight. One of you will rout 1,000, because the Lord your God fights for you just as He promised. And the Lord Jesus said at the end of His life, I am with you always. I will never leave you. How will this happen? How can your being just one can make a difference in this world? It is when you have the Lord Jesus with you in the boat. They had Jesus with them in the boat, and they had only one loaf. They felt they had nothing. But with the Lord Jesus in your life, in your heart, that one can be multiplied to be a blessing for many, many, many. So just remember, Jesus says, don't you understand? His maths is not the maths of this world. God bless you. Have a good week and enjoy yourself. But remember, I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength.